training mesh of what they want and do not want to be true. Now, when I read that in his book, I got chills up and down my spine because I said, this meshes exactly with what I'm talking about in my section, in my presentation called Truth versus Perception. And he's encapsulating it in a sentence perfectly. All right? We want things to be true. That doesn't make it so. That's not what makes truth the way that it is. What makes truth is the way that it is what behaviors were taken and what is the actual effect in the manifested world. That's how things are. Okay? It doesn't matter how we want them to be. They may be a completely different way right now than we want them to be. And I would say for the people in this room, they are a completely different way than we want them to be. But most people in the world think, they kind of believe that they're the arbiter of truth. And that's a bad place to be in. That's a very, very low level of consciousness. To think that if I don't believe that it's this way, it's not this way. Many people are trapped in that state of mind. Okay? Now, the reason I even bring this up and included Travis's quote here is at this conference that we were just at a couple of weeks ago. Okay? I didn't speak at it. I tabled at it. A woman came up to my table. And she picked up my New Age Bullshit DVD, which is available here today in the back. And she said, "What's this about?" With a real skeptical look. And I explained, well, it's a 7-hour extended video podcast that has many, many slides. Okay? I gave a shortened version of it at the Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia. And this is the extended version that goes deeply into the deception of the New Age movement and how it is a religion that is designed to suppress the masculine side of the personality, which is the side that actually takes action and creates change. Okay? And that's, of course, pushed by the sacred feminine, which is care and creativity, and compassion. Right? Both need to be present. We're going to talk about that here today. But I said this is about the suppression of that masculine energy. And that's what the New Age movement is about. The suppression of the masculine, right? So I said what the New Age religion wants to teach people is just accept everything the way it is, no matter how unjust it is, no matter how deplorable the conditions are, no matter how much evil is taking place in our midst. Accept it. That's the New Age religion. And here's what she said. That's exactly how I am. I just accept everything. I don't make any judgments on anything that occurs, no matter what it is, no matter how it's perceived. You want to perceive it as evil? That's your judgment. I said, yes, it is my judgment. You know why? Because it's evil. It really is. There is such a thing. I said, and you're content to let evil run amok and take this whole world because you don't want to act. Because what's really there is cowardice. That's what it really is. Okay? She didn't want to hear that. She said, I prefer not to see it that way. Now, align this with the quote. I prefer not to see it that way. Okay? And I hope by some miracle she happens to see this presentation at some point. Okay? And, in hindsight, I didn't say this to her on the spot, but I thought about it for a little bit the next day. And what I should have really said is, no, you prefer not to see, period. That's the truth. Okay? So I prefer not to see it that way means, no, I want to ignore reality. I want to believe what I want to be true is the way that it already is. And this is what the New Age hoax is peddling to people. Okay? So, great quote that I thought accurately sums it all up. See, this woman also told me that she is a follower, quote unquote, of the New Age ideology that is referred to as the Course in Miracles. How many people have even heard of this? A lot of people. Okay? You know what that is? It's called solipsism, wrapped in a nice, neat new package. Solipsism. How many people are familiar with the ideology called solipsism? Good. More than I would have thought. Most people have never heard of this. Okay? Solipsism is a completely egoic and destructive ideology that has absolutely no bearing or resemblance to truth in any way. And the people who are solipsists are mentally ill. I'm not even going to provide any evidence of that. I'm telling you, you need to research this religion and sickness for yourself. It's a mental illness. A solipsist is a mentally ill person who should probably be somehow removed, segregated from society, and institutionalized until they are made well, because they are a destructive influence on society. This is what I focused on podcast number 1 of my podcast series and radio shows. I went into the ideology of what solipsism is, and how destructive it is, and how it's a religion. Okay? What this is, well, first of all, let's look at the word. And you'll notice I'll be breaking down words all day long. Because if you don't understand where words came from, you don't really understand what they really were intended to mean. Regardless of whatever connotation they may have taken on in the modern world, the intended meaning of the word, the original meaning, is derived from its etymological derivation. You need to go into the ancient languages, Latin and Greek roots and other languages, Germanic, Arabic, etc., and you need to break down the words from their etymological origins. Then you will understand their real meaning. And I'm telling you, you do this, and the top of your head will blow off by what you will find. By what words we speak on a daily basis actually mean. And we have no idea what they mean. Okay? So, the word solipsism comes from the Latin adjective solus, which means alone or one. And then the Latin pronoun ipse, which means self, myself, etc. Okay? The ideology of solipsism is that nothing exists outside of me. I'm the only being that exists in creation. Or essentially, it's another way of saying I'm God. Okay? That my perception is the only real perception and no one else is here. Now imagine that. Now, what I'm essentially telling the audience here today is your perceptions are not the truth. You have to work to align your perceptions with the truth. That's damaging enough to the human ego, okay? If I just said, none of you exist, I'm only perceiving your existence, I'm the only one who exists, imagine how egoic that statement is, and actually how demoralizing it is to other people. You're even telling them, I don't even consider that you exist. That's what a solipsist is. They believe the universe is a big illusion created somehow for their amusement. And that there's no objective reality, that you don't exist, you don't exist, you don't exist, you don't exist. I'm the only one who exists. And that's not mental illness. We don't diagnose that as mental illness. Okay? I don't care if you want to accept the notion everything is one. I personally accept that notion. I do accept that we are all one. That doesn't mean you're not existent in the physical domain right now as I'm talking to you. Of course we all exist here. We are in the physical domain. Okay? The whole point is, these people want to believe the entire spiritual physical domain is such an illusion that nothing that takes place in it matters or has any significance and should just be watched and nothing should be done to change it. And let me explain what this is, folks. When I was a Satanist, okay, and I was working inside the Church of Satan and other dark occult organizations, they have a set of sins, believe it or not. They don't look at them as sins in the same way that, religionists look at sin. But they have the things that, these are behaviors and thought patterns that should not be engaged in by the dark occultist themselves, by the magician, if you will. You are not to engage in these behaviors, but we are to peddle them to other people. We are to get them to engage in these behaviors. Okay? You know what the first one is? No, it's not. That's the second or third. I think it's the third, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the list handy. But the first one is stupidity. That's the first satanic sin. Okay? For the dark occultist. But they want other people in deep stupidity. They want other people in deep ignorance. The idea here is we will know it all. We will know the truth. so that we can control others and keep them a dumbed down herd. Okay? There's a bunch of other ones, but I think the second or third is solipsism. Solipsism is one of the biggest sin for Satanists and dark Luciferians and dark occultists. They don't want any of their membership believing in this mental illness nonsense. Okay? But they want to propagate it and peddle it. They want to do that. And they told me personally, higher ups in this network told me personally when I was working with them, wait until you see the New Age books that our membership will be writing, or either writing ourselves or putting into the hands of useful dupes to write and put out there. We'll be giving them the idea, they'll write it for us, put it out there as their own idea. And they said, we are going to propagate and peddle solipsism like you have never seen. And you know what? When they say something, they do it. I'm serious. Their act is together. They act on the same page. And for that, I have respect for them as an enemy. And I don't take anything they do lightly. I recognize they have the will. They're not like the rest of humanity. They align their thoughts, their knowledge, with their version of care. You know, it's not like our emotionally based care, but they care about what they're doing, and then they act. And when they act in concert, and they get it done. Okay? I'm not saying, I agree with any of their agenda, because I don't, and I'm trying to stop it. But I have respect for their unity. They are unified and on the same page, and humanity is not. And that's why, in all honesty, we're having our rear ends handed to us in this spiritual battle right now. At least right now. Solipsism is the ideology that only one's mind is sure to exist. Solipsists contend that knowledge of anything that is outside of one's own mind is unsure, and hence there is no such thing as objective truth. Okay? No such thing as objective truth. And therefore, nothing about the external world and its workings can actually ever be known. Just think about that statement. It's saying no one can ever know anything. You cannot come to know anything at all. There is no such thing as knowledge. So what I would say to somebody who's following the quote-unquote Course in Miracles, or a Course in Solipsism, or a Course in acceptance of all forms of evil in this world, is you can't know anything by reading the Course in Miracles, because nothing can be known. How could why would a solipsist ever pick up a book? Why would a solipsist ever watch anything, any video? Why would a solipsist ever engage in a conversation with another human being? Tell a solipsist you can't know that you're going to fall off that cliff, so why don't you go try to walk over it and see what happens? Because you can't be sure of anything. They won't do that, though. The whole point here is this is a religion. This is a New Age religion. And I'm telling you who it's peddled by. It's peddled by the occultists who have the knowledge of how natural law works and are trying to put out whatever ideologies they can, destructive ideologies they can, to get people not to understand it. Or to even go so far as to believe that nothing can be understood. Why would you bother to look into natural law? Nothing can be known. It's unbelievable that anybody would be so gullible and naive to fall into this mindset. Let me just tell you what it really is. It's a person who has given up on life. They feel that it's so difficult to know anything and they don't want to do the work to come to that level of knowledge that they've just said, I don't believe it can be known. That makes me feel more comfortable in my ignorance and laziness. That's the truth about what solipsism is. Okay? And that's the truth about my friend I bumped into at the MUFON conference. And I'd say that to her face. Okay? So, we have to realize we're battling this force. This religion is on the rise. Solipsism is on the rise. More people are becoming solipsists or solipsistic in their beliefs, in their thought processes. Let's look at some basic definitions and working definitions. Now, first thing we're going to define is definition. Let's define what a definition is, okay? A definition is an exact statement, a statement of the exact meaning of a word, all right? We're looking for an exact meaning, not a connotation, not a maybe or a like or a somewhat. We're looking to narrow the focus. That's why it definites it. It makes it finite. We're taking it not infinite, we're finiting it. We're making it finite. Okay? We're actually limiting through words what something means so we can be clearer about what we're saying. Okay? It's an exact statement or description of the nature, scope, or meaning of something. Another way we could look at a definition when we're talking about visual or audio definition is it's the degree of distinctness or clarity of an object, image, or sound. Okay? So why do people buy HD TV sets? They want higher definition. They want a higher clarity of the picture. Okay? If you have high definition audio, for audiophiles, they won't accept anything but high definition audio. Because in comparison to low def audio, the clarity of the sound is very good. It's much better. Okay? So that's what definition is. It is all related to clarity. When we use it in conjunction with words, it means the clarity of the meaning is amplified. Okay? And when it's with a picture, the clarity of our vision, of the ability to see what the picture is, the information in the picture is amplified. And same thing with sound. The more accurate the definitions that we have for words or concepts, the better our clarity of meaning and therefore our understanding of those concepts, words or concepts will be. So definition simply means clarity of meaning when we're applying it to words and concepts. So therefore, let's define natural law. So this is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the day. We have to define it. The simple definition of natural is inherent, having a basis in nature, reality, and truth, not made or caused by humankind. So if it's natural, wasn't made by man. Mankind didn't make it. Okay? And again, the origin of the word, neter in Egyptian, means spirit, and all means of or related to. So of or related to spirit. It is all of nature, the spiritual domain. See, this is the other part. People believe that the spiritual domain is separate from the physical domain. This is a huge thread and a huge central focus in all of my work. If you think the spiritual domain is not where you are at now because you're in the physical domain, you're mistaken. If you think that the spiritual domain is someplace other than the physical domain, you're also mistaken. If you place emphasis on one above the other and say, well, this one takes precedence and this one's not important. Either way you do it, whether you say the spiritual is more important and the world of matter should not be given any significance, it's imbalance. And it's not true. Okay? Or if you say, hey, like scientism does in many, left brain scientism, the material world is all that there is. This is just a dead mechanized clockwork called the universe, and it happened by accident for no reason. And there's no such thing as the spiritual domain. Both of these worldviews, and we're going to get to a breakdown of these worldviews, they're completely inaccurate, they're not based in truth, and most of all, they're based on brain imbalance. And we're going to see how one of these worldviews or another develops when either the left brain hemisphere or the right brain hemisphere has taken precedence and dominance within the individual consciousness. So, natural means spiritual. These words could be used interchangeably. So when I'm talking about natural law, I mean spiritual law. Unseen spiritual laws. But overall, the dictionary definition of natural is it's inherent to nature and it's not made by man. The word law the definition is an existing condition which is both binding and immutable. So let's look at each one of these words. Existing. It means that it is present. It is present. Okay? be just ignored and expected that, well, that doesn't make it true, and it's not going to have an effect. It's there. It's present. That's why it's a law, that it's in operation, that is in operation. It is binding. Binding means it has an effect. It means it doesn't matter whether you believe that it has an effect. It doesn't matter whether you understand that it has an effect. It doesn't care. And this is another big hammer to the ego. The human ego wants to hear what it wants to hear. One of the things it wants to hear is, the universe cares about you. Personally. It cares about John. It cares about Bob. It cares about Mary. It cares about Elizabeth, whatever. Okay? It cares about you individually as a being. Now, you could go so far as to say you believe that the creator of the universe cares about you. I'm not denying anybody or saying don't think that. What I'm saying is that the laws of the universe don't care about you. Laws have been created in this realm that work flawlessly. 100% of the time, flawlessly. Let me ask people to envision this scenario to try to clarify this. A couple are on a picnic. They're out in a state forest or something like that. They're on a picnic. About 50 yards away from where they're at, okay, there's a pretty tall cliff, maybe about 200 feet. Okay, and it ends in some jagged rocks. They brought their 2-year-old child on the picnic with them. They unfold the blanket, take out the picnic basket, they're having their picnic. Maybe passions got heated and the husband and wife were, making out a little bit. Their kid, 2-year-old daughter, in her nice Sunday sundress or whatever, wanders off, gets to the edge of that cliff. Will gravity care if that girl goes over the edge? No. Will gravity allow her to go over the edge? Yes, it will. Gravity is not going to say, this girl doesn't understand this law, and she'll die if she goes over that edge. She's innocent. She's nescient even. Not even ignorant. Innocent and nescient. Will that law still have an effect? You damn better well believe it will. And so does natural law in the same way. It doesn't care whether you don't know. It doesn't care whether you're nescient or ignorant. It's in effect, it's binding, and it is immutable. Immutable means that nothing you can ever do can ever change it. It is in effect eternally. Because man didn't put it into effect. You know who put it into effect? The creator of the universe put it into effect. And I don't really care what you think of that force as. You could think of it as an impersonal force. You could think of it as the man with the beard. You could think of it as this remote control. I don't really care what you think of it as. Personally, that's none of my business. But you know what? If you think of it that it's man that makes the laws, then I have a problem. Because man doesn't make these laws I'm talking about. The creator of the universe set these laws into motion, put them into effect, and they bind you. You and I are bound by these laws, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, whether we understand it or not. They're in effect, and you are already creating the reality that we are experiencing based upon interaction with these unseen laws. Already. You're already doing it. You can never not be doing it. That's an impossibility. Okay? You're always creating, co-creating in harmony, in cooperation, I should say. Whether it's in harmony or opposition is a different story. In cooperation with these spiritual laws that I'm going to talk about. You are already creating in cooperation with them and can never not do so as long as you exist in the physical domain. Okay? So that's what the simple definitions that we're working forward with. Natural law doesn't mean anything other than this. That's it. It means, so let's put them together. Inherent, existing conditions. Conditions that exist in nature, which are both binding and immutable. They have an effect whether they're understood or not, and they cannot be changed. So what would be our requirement of knowledge here? What do you think should be done? If we are always working with these, do you think we're going to create something that is wise to create? that is good, that is in alignment with what we say we want, if we don't know how these laws operate? You know what's going to be created? A mess. Total chaos. Something you don't want. Something that leads to enormous suffering, which is where we're at. If, on the other hand, you have that knowledge of how these things work, then you align your behavior to them, you're going to create a whole new different ballgame. And then you're going to not have self-inflicted suffering. Okay? That's what this is all about. So let's give a working definition. This is what I call the soundbite, right? People say, well, tell me what natural law is, Mark. You have a few days? Maybe a large portion of the day like we're going to cover today. Maybe. Some people will get it. Okay? But really, you need to devote a large amount of time to studying this, understanding it, reading about it, and even experimenting with it. This is not an untestable hypothesis. Okay? And it's not a hypothesis, it's actually a law. But it's not untestable. You can test it. You can apply all the scientific methodologies to natural law. Same thing. Gather your information, observe, hypothesize, observe, test the results, publish the results. That's the scientific methodology. The scientific methodology will be borne out for everything I'm talking about in this presentation if it is applied. Because this is not a religion. This is not some new age mumbo jumbo. This is a science. It is a science that constitutes knowledge of how laws that are existent, in operation, and immutable in this universe work, and how we are creating what we experience in conjunction with these operating laws. And man didn't put them into effect. Whatever created this universe put them into effect. I'm not here today to tell you what that is. Your job in your own personal experience is to get in touch with what you feel that is. I'm not here to tell you what that is. I'm not here to tell anybody what that is. But my whole point is, it created these laws, and they're in effect. And if you want to stop suffering, and if you want the human condition to change, you have to understand how these laws work. There is no way around that. Knowledge of these laws is required. And this is what people in the so-called New Age movement and in religious communities and in other communities don't want to acknowledge. They don't want to acknowledge that work is required. So let's give a working definition for natural law, my soundbite variant, okay? I tell people who want the 6 o'clock news edition of what natural law is, okay? Natural law is universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that govern the consequences of behavior, and specifically, at least on this planet, human behavior. I would say in the universe, it governs the behavior of all intelligent beings. Intelligent beings. Okay? Natural law is a body of universal spiritual laws which act as the governing dynamics of consciousness. The governing dynamics of consciousness. That's the working definition. Let's look at the dynamics between discovery and belief. The difference between discovery and belief. Because again, natural law is capable of being discovered, understood, and harmonized with. Now, does that sound like a religion? Religion asks people to believe, accept, and do without question. What this is saying, this exists, you're bound by it. The best you can do is to understand its operation like you would understand gravity, and therefore not just walk toward the edge of a 200-foot cliff that is bottomed by jagged rocks. If you're intelligent and you understand how the law of gravity works, you won't do that behavior. Okay? Just like if you're intelligent and you understand how natural law works, you won't do certain behaviors to create a prison for the entire species, for your entire species. Unfortunately, humanity has not reached that level of consciousness yet. They are not at that level of co-creative intelligence to understand how these laws work and then align their behaviors to them. So natural law has nothing to do with religion. It's not a belief system. It's a science. It is a discoverable operation that is already in effect that we can either understand and align our behavior to, or remain ignorant of and suffer as a result of that ignorance, because it's already